Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have once again reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper. This is episode 84, and tonight we continue our exploration of the films from the Oscar season of 50 years ago, 1974. Tonight's film for discussion features John Wayne, directed by John Sturges. It's McHugh. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here this evening, coming to you from Midtown Manhattan in New York City. And I've got a couple panelists with me to discuss this film. First, he studied 1942 and 1947 with me. Please welcome our own corrupt public official who must have cheated when he won on Jeopardy all those years ago. It's Jim Carroll, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll be right here until my dying day. I don't know just how to say all the things I feel. I just know that I love you so, and it gives me such a thrill. Cause I find what this world is searching for. Yeah, right here, my dear. I don't have to look no. In all my days, I hope and I pray for someone just like you to make me feel the way you do. I'm never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna stop. Stop the way you feel about you. Girl, I just can't live without you. I'm never gonna quit. Quit just ain't my stick. Gonna stay right here with you. Do all the things you want me to do, yeah. Keep on doing Oh yeah. Never gonna.
Good evening, cinema lovers. Hello, cinema lovers. You have once again reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper. This is episode 84, and tonight we continue our exploration of the films from the Oscar season of 50 years ago, 1974. And tonight's film for discussion features John Wayne, directed by John Sturges. It's McHugh. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts for the evening and coming to you from Midtown Manhattan in New York City as I continue to go back and forth between New York and Los Angeles. I've also got a couple panelists with me tonight to discuss this film. First, he studied 1942 and 1947 with me. Please welcome our own corrupt public official who must have cheated when he won on Jeopardy all those years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Carroll is here. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here for the evening, coming to you from Midtown Manhattan in New York City as I continue to go back and forth between New York and Los Angeles. It's time to introduce my co-host for the evening. First, he studied 1942 and 1947 with me. Please welcome our own corrupt public official who must have cheated when he won on Jeopardy all those years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Carroll is here.
Don't stay right here with you. I'll see you through. Girl, you hear me? Whenever you feel that you want to be here, or you need whatever, I'll be right on back. Get there, baby. Get there. Keep on doing, keep on, right on doing it. Keep on, my baby. Right on doing it. Yeah. Baby, keep on, keep on doing it. Baby, keep on, yeah. Keep on right on doing it.
Hi, honey, it's me. I went to see the doctor today. 'Cause ever since you've been gone, I had a pain deep down inside. He says there's nothing really wrong with me. I'm just missing my man. So, honey, please, come on home as soon as you can. Doctor's orders say there's only one thing for me. Nothing he can do, 'cause only you can cure me. Says in my condition, love's the best physician. He's prescribed all potions full of a warm emotion. My love is spoonful to be taken. It's the only way to stop this empty heart of mine. So maybe it won't get better to you back again. He told me doctor's orders need your love in all to me now. I know there ain't no doubt about his arms so on your love. I've been made way down you're making it like a stranger. A doctor's orders say, please say you understand how I feel, honey. I know you got a lot of things on your mind. Oh, but I'm missing you so bad. Please. Oh, please, come on home.
How you doing out there?
How you doing?
You ever seem to have one of those days where it just seems like everybody's getting on your case, from your teacher all the way down to your best girlfriend?
Everybody?
Well, you know, I used to have them just about all the time, but I found a way to get out of it.
How'd you do that?
Let me tell you about it. Sitting in the classroom thinking it's a drag. Listen to the teacher rap, just ain't my bag. New bells ring, you know that's my cue. I'm gonna meet the boys on floor number 2. Smoking in the boys' room. Smoking in the boys' room. Now, teacher, don't you feel me? Up with your rules. But everybody knows that smoking ain't allowed in school. Checking out the halls, making sure the coast is clear. Looking in the stalls, no, there ain't nobody here. My buddy Bang and me and Paul. To get caught would surely be the death of us all. Smoking in the boys' room. Yeah, smoking in the boys' room. Nah, teacher, don't you feel me? Up with your rules. But everybody knows that smoking ain't allowed. Checkout counter and I got bored. Teacher was looking for me all around. 2 hours later, you know I was found. Smoking in the boys' room. Yes, indeed, I was smoking in the boys' room. Teacher, don't you feel me? Up with your rules. Everybody knows that smoking ain't allowed in school. One more. Smoking in the boys' room. Smoking in the boys' room. Now, teacher, I am fully aware of the rules, but everybody knows that smoking ain't allowed in school. May not drive a great big Cadillac. Against the white wall, TV antennas in the back. You may not have a car at all, but remember, brothers and sisters,
Howdy.
just
There it is. Let's take a look at your frame here. Let's see how it's looking.
Got my paintings in the back. Ayo.
There you go. You painted those?
I mean, pictures. I said paintings, but they're pictures.
So you took them, though?
Mm-hmm.
Any way you can raise your computer so we're not staring up at glaring lights?
Stand by.
Yeah. Even if it's like books or something, you know, like.
Yeah. I got a. Here we go. Everybody calm down. There we go.
I'm very calm.
I know.
So tilt it down now.
Well, let me move those then.
The other thing you could do is you could also flip them off and see if you can, because they're not doing much for you. You need front light, not backlight.
Oh, you said, flip these lights off. Oh, well, hold on. I could do this too.
Okay, so that's a little dark.
Yeah, hold on. Oh, I forgot about that. Let's do this.
Is that when you have girls over? Is that your?
Hold on.
As soon as the girl comes in, it gets to.
It's you know what time it is. There it is. No. It might be too bright. This is what we'll do.
You need something in front of you, like
I got you.
Less behind you.
I got you. Hold on. Oh, I'm sweating. I'm so hot. Yellow screen. Let's see if I can get a little clever here. Stand by. You're not recording already, are you?
I am, but only because I taped the intro so you guys don't have to deal with me going over it a few times.
That's too yellow, huh?
It's not bad. What happens if the lights behind you are out? Like, it's only too yellow if it's... So that's better. Now tilt down. Give yourself slightly less headroom.
Okay, let me
move a little bit better than that. Does it get brighter, the front light, or no?
No, it doesn't. Not brighter than that.
I prefer a slightly darker situation with a little bit of front light than to all that backlight, because it's distracting and glaring. So this is fine. This is good. My background's dark too, as you can see. Everything's front light, and the background behind me is dark. So
true.
But mine is a little bit brighter than yours. But yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So the other thing I'm going to ask you to do is see how you put in your full name.
Yeah.
So eventually, I don't know if you've ever seen these shows, but we punch in so the StreamYard logo and our names are not there. Okay. So if you can make your name smaller to just Nick or just Bunch or something, you know what I mean? Like, there you go. See how easy that was? It's beautiful. It's perfect. Jim just sent me an email saying his wife is giving him a hard time and he'll be there in 2 minutes.
Cool. No worries. Is this good lighting for this front? I could do a different color.
Yeah, it's fine. Did the backlights come back on?
I did turn them on, but they're really low. Is that not okay? Was it better when they were
I feel like it's very glary. See how the
yeah.
Well, I don't see the bulbs themselves.
Yeah.
And now see the glare on your photographs, even like the reflective glare on your photographs.
Yeah.
That's the tricky thing. If they weren't like, yeah, there would be ways to, like, if we had more time, we could. There'd be ways to do it if you really needed that backlight, but it's a lot of backlight. What I like is that candle in the corner. Like that's
that is nice. Let me try. They didn't really do much, but it's on. It's something.
Yeah.
I don't like how bright I am here.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. Because we punch in, leave yourselves a little headroom. Maybe not that much headroom, but a little bit.
Something's going on with the shadows on my face that I am not a fan of.
Are you switching screens on your computer?
No, it's a color thing that keeps changing. There we go. I'll leave that.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I think it's solid.
Damn, I wish there was one more light, like a better front light. I'm using a computer monitor with the color on YouTube.
I mean, I am to some degree as well, but I've also got a front light here, and I've got a couple ring lights.
See, I could do a ring light, but oh well.
And well, it's not my apartment. Obviously, I'm out of town, so I just happen to be in an actor's apartment, and so she has ring lights.
Oh, that worked out. That's nice.
Speaking of actors, There's
Hey,
he's the Jim, Nick, Jim.
hey, Nick.
How's it going?
It's going.
Jim, did you promise to visit Devin while you're in Los Angeles? Did you?
I didn't. I saw one person while I was in Los Angeles because all
And
the
it was
rest
your
of the
wife.
time I was in the theater watching Waitress.
Okay, all right. I've just been watching Girls 5 Eva with Sarah Bareilles. So you mentioning Waitress?
Sarah Bareilles was not in the La Mirada version of Waitress.
I would think. Well, but she wrote it.
I mean, she did write it, yes. And I did watch the pro shot of Waitress on the way home, on the flight home, because I saw the staged version so many times that I was curious to see how the staging had changed.
I see.
Between the Broadway and this is a different director and some different choreography, but a very similar set.
Yeah. Speaking of sets, yours looks good. So I think
Man, this is nice and bright.
I hate that you're wearing plaid. It's
Do you
terrible
want?
on
I can
camera.
quick change my shirt. I literally just threw this on.
Yes, then I will cut away from you so you can get naked.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Like,
Change shirt and pants off.
Mandatory attire.
Plaid just looks terrible on camera, Jim.
how do you feel about gray? Does gray work for you?
I mean, it depends on how gray. I am also wearing gray, so I don't know if we'll be.
It's a darker gray.
Okay, yeah, then you should be fine. That looks great. Yeah, it is a much darker gray.
Yeah.
It is better. I have one more LA related question for you, but I can't remember what it was. But Nick is obviously in LA.
I am in LA.
Nick does know Devin, much to his disappointment.
Stop.
Nick, are you going to see their show?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to go. If I'm back in town this Sunday, I think I'm gonna try to go this Sunday or next Sunday.
Okay.
Nick, since you're in LA, you should go to Pixar Putt. It is a mini golf pop up down at Long Beach that has characters from all of the different Pixar
First of all,
films.
Nick isn't 9 years old. Secondly,
There's nothing wrong with it.
It's where you could be an adult and do mini golf.
why does he care about the Pixar characters?
I care about the Pixar characters.
You're a unique character. You're a unique person. You also care about these characters. So,
oh, it's true. I do. Did you? Were you able to see? I guess you were able to see Transformers.
So one thing that I wanted to go over with you guys is this we're taping it now, and I may have miscalculated a little bit. Like I was trying to do movies that I've seen recently, so it's fresh. They're fresher in my head as I go through this project of like 100 1974 movies. But then I realized I wanted to do it differently. So the point is, I'm going to treat this show as if, because this is airing like in the middle of the world, like episode 84. So it's like in the middle ground there. So I'm going to treat this as if this is not the first time either of you are appearing on this 1974 project thing.
Okay.
Meaning I will try and book you guys for another thing that will air before this one.
Got it.
Cool.
So like Nick, especially, I'm not going to pretend like this is. I'm going to pretend like this is not your first one. Whereas when we do tape your first one, I'll be like, and a new person, blah blah blah. I'll make a big deal out of it.
Okay. Cool.
But not so much this time. And I think that those are my main disclaimers. I did the opening already, so I'm going to start with the intros. Anybody have any questions or concerns before I start?
No. Do you need me to take off my glasses?
Oh yes, that was yes, please.
I am going to be. You'll see me do this a little bit because I have my notes on the other monitor.
Okay.
Oh, I took notes.
Yes, no, that's fine. I can always cut around. Like you can get. I have notes too. I have them on my computer, so I toggle. So it's easier that way. But okay, I'm going to start with Jim's intro. He studied 1942 and 1947 with me. Please welcome our own corrupt public official who must have cheated when he won on Jeopardy all those years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Carroll is here.
There's no proof of that. There's no proof of me cheating. Nobody said that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm suspicious. Is all I'm saying. When you won on Jeopardy all those years ago. Also with us, ladies and gentlemen, a straight out of the Air Force comes our no nonsense cop who aims to put Jim away. Hold on, I'm going to do that over again.
Okay.
All right, stand by. I'm suspicious is all I'm saying, Jim. I have some suspicions. Also with us, straight out of the Air Force, comes our no-nonsense cop who aims to put Jim away once and for all. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Bunch is here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. So these are the three, me, Jim, and Nick. And so by way of reminder, guys, we are opening and closing each show with a song from 1974, counting down the top songs of the year. We got romantic tonight a little bit with John Denver's very sweet Sunshine on My Shoulders. We got very romantic tonight with John Denver's very sweet Sunshine on My Shoulders, sometimes just called Sunshine, and I see why, because it could be a tongue twister. Sunshine on My Shoulders was the number 18 song of 1974. Jim's a little older than Nick. Have you guys ever heard of this song?
I don't think so.
You know, I listened to it and I have heard it before.
It's kind of a classic. You know, John Denver.
It is kind of like I wouldn't say it's nothing that I've ever had in rotation, but it's
Well,
John Denver. So like, you know,
Sunshine on your shoulders makes you happy, Jim. Sunshine in your eyes, that makes you cry. That's all.
I'm just saying it's no Annie song. That's all.
It's no Annie song. He's got Perhaps Love, and of course, you know, Take Me Home, Country Road is probably the number one John Denver song. But I do appreciate Sunshine on My Shoulders. Do you know Take Me Home, Country Road?
Of course.
All right.
Of course.
So we're back on the same page a little bit. But I do enjoy Sunshine on My Shoulders, if I can say it properly. It's time for a summary. I'm going to give the audience a brief plot summary here for McHugh. Seattle cop McHugh learns that his partner was murdered, and he immediately suspects it's part of a larger cover-up. He will stop at nothing to expose those responsible and bring them to justice, or at least his own interpretation of justice. Nick, how was that summary?
Amazing. It was good. Straight to the point. Told the story.
It's succinct. You know, you got to be short with these things. Just give the audience a little taste of what's going on in case they haven't seen it. So this section is opening thoughts. So guys, this is when, you know, I'm going to ask you what you thought. Well, first I want to ask thumbs up, thumbs down generally, and then I'll get to the why. Show me your thumbs. Thumbs up from Nick, sideways for Jim, and I'm, you know, I'm more aligned with Jim, maybe slightly up a little bit. Jim, what was the primary reason why you're sideways on this one?
I felt like it got really slow in places, and there was some really like straining of suspension of disbelief moments in there for me.
So little plot holes for Nick. Let's for Jim. Sorry. So a few plot holes for Jim there. So we'll dig into that hopefully. Nick, why did you like it?
I enjoyed it. I really liked the pace, especially in the beginning. There was a few times where it was a little drawn out. But overall, I thought the camera angles and the shots were great. And overall, it was an engaging movie.
And, you know, for me, the 14-year-old boy in me was intrigued and entertained, which is not as much of a recommendation as it may sound. That's sort of where I wound up with this movie. So I feel like Jim wants to talk about screenplay and Nick wants to talk about direction a little bit because he talked about the shots and shot choices. And so I'm going to break the tie because I also feel like the direction was one of the stronger parts of the film, with a very big but in the middle there, which I'll get to. But I agree with Nick to some degree is the film does what Sturges tends to do well. And for those of you who don't know Sturges' history, we're talking about The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, Never So Few, and his masterpiece, Bad Day at Black Rock. What Sturges tends to do well is full frames, borderline excellent action, car chases in this case, and an emphasis of story plot with only cursory efforts made towards character. On that end, this film does a better job than something like The Magnificent Seven, whose balancing of seven leads led to basic one-dimensional characters from my point of view. Still, as you normally get with Sturges, cool, male-dominated action and a mixed bag in terms of performances, which we'll also get to, almost as if he completely ignores the actors. So the good ones do well and the bad ones are lost. Or at least those that need more direction, fine, they aren't going to get it. And that's come up time and time again as throughout his career. For example, Magnificent Seven again as an example. Steve McQueen is fine without his help. Horst Buchholz is not. And so that's sort of, this feels like a very John Sturges film from that point of view. Nick, did that cover some of the things that you were thinking about when you were talking about some of the angles and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. I noticed pretty early on that there were very few close-up, lots of wide angles, wider angles, and they perfectly established everything that was going on without too much or too little. And the screen time, I think, was pretty appropriate across the board. And yeah.
What do you mean by screen time was appropriate? You mean the pacing, or?
Well, yeah, with the pacing and not focusing too much on the actors who needed less time. And I never felt like most of the time I didn't feel like a scene dragged on too long. Or it was like focused too much on a poor acting scene, if you will.
He is a competent storyteller and a competent visual storyteller at that. At least in terms of plot and giving you information for plot. Jim has some plot holes that he's going to bring up later. But before we get to that, Jim, John Sturges is a director here. Anything I say ring true with you?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the car chases were a high point. I think that the opening sequence was a high point for me. I was immediately drawn in.
I talked about that actually in my screenplay comments, because I think it's a good opening from a screenplay point of view. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, you get so much in that, including like, you talked about the actors. I actually thought there was a beautiful acting moment in that opening, from Officer Boyle, who you don't know is a cop yet.
Right.
But yeah, I think part of the problem that I had was that all of these action sequences were so amazing. The car chase, the car chase through the streets of Seattle. I also think that he gave a sense of the city really well. Like you
never see Seattle. How often do you see Seattle in movies?
It was one of the things I was actually looking for when I was like, what city is this? And then they're like, oh, Seattle. And that made me really interested in the movie. Because I'm like, how often do you see this? So yeah, and all the way to the ending, I thought the beach the beach chase was another great action sequence. Even the fights, the little bits of fist fights that you get through the movie, the combat was really well done.
One thing that Rob pointed out early on, and Jim, Rob Katecki, he was on one of these episodes, and he pointed out, I think these action sequences stand out to us because they are practical. These are real cars doing real stunts on real roads. In this case, so they now it's all CGI and it doesn't feel as immersive almost. So there's something that even though it's an old movie, it feels new again to some of us who have been so inundated with false chases and false action.
Well, it feels dangerous in a way that I don't think modern movies really capture as well,
or would be allowed to do. Honestly,
yeah.
You laugh, but I'm not really joking. I mean, Nick works in production as well, and Nick. Imagine getting the insurance policies for some of these stunts.
Even trying to permit half of that, having to explain that, there's not a chance.
I mean, I thought about the French Connection.
Yeah.
During some of that, because that the famous thing is that they kind of went rogue, right? They
totally went rogue, and William Friedkin said he would not do that if he was making it today. Yeah, for sure. And
that's I in the back of my mind, I was wondering, like, how much of this did they say that they were going to do?
Yeah, I there's not the same amount of stories. French Connection though was it's New York, and so like I think Seattle's really happy to have a film production.
That's fair.
So Jim, I know you want to talk about screenplay, but I did want to get some, and you talk about the beautiful acting moment, and I think that speaks to what I was talking about, this sort of like mixed bag in terms of performances, because it's just judging from Sturges' career, it feels like Sturges, that moment was that actor finding a good moment, and Sturges having nothing to do with it. It's a theory because there's such a mixed bag in this movie. Do you feel like that part is accurate, or do you feel differently about the performances overall without calling out a specific one?
I feel like I think that they surrounded John Wayne with an actual like decent amount of really capable actors. Like Colleen Dewhurst is a solid actor.
I did say not to call out specific ones, but okay.
I mean, for example,
you're not wrong.
But I'm saying there are actors in this movie that I thought. I don't think that the screenplay was particularly forgiving or gave a lot to the actors, and you got a sense that there were actors who were working overtime to really bring something to their characters, successful or not. And I thought I did see, I felt that I saw around John Wayne a lot of actors trying to really do the best job that they could.
I mostly agree. I don't know about a lot because I feel like it's mixed, but to your point, I mean, like that's Colleen Dewhurst doing the work. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
100%. They are bringing something, and that's why I feel like it's a mixed bag, because these actors are finding these moments on their own. They're on an island, and only the really good actors can manage through that. Some actors, are a little needier, like the way Jim used to be when he was an actor. Nick,
I still am an actor.
You're a Jeopardy champ. Everybody knows this. You're a dad and a Jeopardy champ, and a producer now, apparently too.
That was only one time. I'm never going back to that. I learned my lesson.
Make it sound like you cheated on your wife. I'm never going to do that again.
And I wouldn't know anything about that. Just out of curiosity, can we agree that about the beautiful moment in the opening for that actor?
It's been a couple weeks for me, but so remind me what you're talking about.
For me, it was he goes into the diner and he gets up and he goes into the bathroom, and this was I was still all into the movie, and there's a moment where he looks at the mirror, he looks into the mirror, and for the actions that he has just done, you see him with a face that is full of mixed emotions, mostly regret.
And you have no idea what that means yet, right? Because you don't know who he is or what's going on.
And then it immediately pans down to the badge. And I was like, oh, like, you've drawn so far in just the way that he looks into the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is explained a moment later.
And that's when John Sturges is at his best, right? Like, because that's a great collaborative moment to some degree, because it's John Sturges it's finding a good actor and letting him on his own, and an actor finding a moment, and then Sturges, doing his storytelling thing visual storytelling. You know what I mean? Letting us know, face, badge. That's an element of good direction, but there are actors that need help. And so anyway, Nick, do you remember that moment at all?
Oh yeah, I definitely do. It was kind of a surprise because I wasn't quite sure what was going on, and the look on his face, I said, man, I mean, what's happening? Why is he looking like this? Did he regret it, or like what's going on? And then they showed the badge. I said, oh my God, what's happening here? And then a few moments later, well, we all know.
Yeah. It's the beginning, so it's not too much of a spoiler. So,
true.
But yeah, so I mean, he's done some, interesting things, but that's an early twist, so it's good cinematic storytelling. So I know Jim wanted to talk about screenplay, but we've already started this performance thing. So let's, drill down on some of these individual performances. starting with our McHugh himself, our star, one of the biggest stars of all time. I don't have a lot. I have a lot about John Wayne's persona coming up later, the persona that he carries with him from movie to movie. But since the film is very much representative about masculinity of the time, which I'll get into, in that sense, John Wayne fits perfectly. Now, John Wayne, with one or two exceptions in his career, does what John Wayne does. He brings a certain amount of gravitas, a certain amount of intimidation. He can read lines. He can make certain things believable. He's not asked to deliver the amount of nuance or detail that some of the other character actors that Jim was referring to do. In that sense, it's effective. It's not overly emotional, or it's not asking for a lot of range. But I think it's fine, and it's about what I expect from John Wayne. He's exceeded expectations, 2 or 3 times in his career. But this basically is an adequate John Wayne performance, sort of on brand, if you will. That's my interpretation. Nick, have you ever seen John Wayne before this?
I haven't, but my parents love him. Grew up. I mean, I wasn't paying attention, but they grew up loving John Wayne. Should I talk about what I thought about his performance? So I really enjoyed it. At one point, I was realizing he had this kind of constant look on his face that was almost a look of confusion that was pretty constant no matter the scene. And once I noticed it, I couldn't really quite unnotice it. And that became a little distracting. So that would be my only note that I would say, man, what? But I don't know if that's just his face or, his go-to.
And also no one, not even John Sturges, is really given John Wayne notes at this point. There's only one director really that could give John Wayne notes, and that was the director that John Wayne called Pappy, John Ford. And when John Ford gave notes, he yelled them at, in a very belligerent, demeaning way. Nobody else really treated Duke like that. That was his nickname, Duke. I see what you're saying. He has some stock moves, in the tool bag that he goes to, and if you watch more John Wayne performances, you'll see them again and again. And that's one. But the other one is when he knows something that you don't, kind of a thing, or will know something that the other character doesn't. There's a confidence, a stoic confidence that he carries with him too. That's another, I think, go-to for John Wayne in a lot of moments. But that, especially when he's playing law enforcement, that gets him through a lot of moments. Those two things, confusion when he's being a detective of sorts, and this confidence that gives him the ballsiness to do some of the things that he does. You'll see that throughout his career, and it sort of fits for this rogue cop McHugh kind of person.
Was
Jim,
this the, go,
oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Was this the first time he played a good guy or a cop? Because every other time he was.
No.
This wasn't the first time.
He's like the good guy in a vast majority of his westerns.
So was this the first time he was the bad guy then?
Well, is he a bad guy? I think from our point of view of out of all the people, he's probably the least bad. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the 70s, this is like the line between good and bad is blurring because this is 3 years after Dirty Harry sort of muddied those waters. He's doing the right thing. It's the question of, does the end justify the means? So I don't necessarily feel like I would call him the bad guy, at least in the context of this film. He is uncovering a crime by any means necessary. And so he's definitely not first time. He's been bad guys before, but mostly good guys. He's mostly, the tough sheriff or tough white hat or leader in captain or major in the sands of Iwo Jima, or he's leading the cavalry or something. He's the for many years he was Mr. America to some degree, or Captain America, which I'll get to a little bit. But Jim, John Wayne.
Yeah, I mean you've kind of run it. I was actually expecting this question, so I was trying to go through his performance, and I just kept coming back to he's a blunt instrument in this movie, which is I think that that's kind of what it is. I kind of if I
It's
can
the
use
right
another
thing for
movie.
the movie. I don't know if he's making a
Yeah.
choice, but it works.
Yeah. I mean, if I can use another movie to make an analogy to this movie, in the Casino Royale opening, where you have James Bond chasing the other guy. One guy's doing parkour, and Daniel Craig is like he's guy is going over walls and through things, and Daniel Craig just runs through walls, and that is it. Nothing stops him. He's just and that's
Except
kind
in
of
this
like
case,
John
the guy
Wayne.
running through walls is over 70.
Yeah, which also kind of, but that's the part of the thing is the strains a little bit of disbelief is that he's old.
Although I
And-
will admit, though, he is intimidating still. Like he's still like a tall, muscular guy. He still carries with him a certain amount of gravitas and intimidation.
There is like, yeah, and it's not. I think that there's moments where you can absolutely see that this is what John Wayne does really well, and there are also moments where you can see him move, and you're like, that is a 70-year-old man movie. It's just the way. I mean, you have that problem today with like Patrick Stewart in Picard, where you're like, he's 85. He shouldn't be trying to run anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
But 85 today is the new 70.
yeah. I mean, that's the fair
Except
point.
John Wayne is 3 years away from death, literally at this point.
And I think at this point, he had like one lung.
Yeah,
right?
maybe because of all the smoking. But yeah, oh, sorry, you were done.
No, but I mean, I think to a lot of points, he was there. He did not bring any nuance to a character, but it is a character that needs no nuance.
Sure.
Well, and look at this subset of films. I don't know how many of these Nick have said, but I know you've seen Dirty Harry or Coogan's Bluff, or even to make it more modern, a John Wick type of a thing, in the sense that like how much nuance is going to be required of this character. Like you talk about blunt instrument, isn't that what John Wick's not using his fists as much, mostly guns if I remember correctly, but it's a similar kind of a thing where he's a man on a mission and it by any means necessary, and his personal backstory and character work is almost irrelevant.
I will say, if I have a quibble with this, I feel like the movie is, and I think there was a description too that called it like a neo-noir movie, like it was trying to move into this noir territory.
Don't believe those Amazon descriptions. That's
and I was like,
not a thing.
I watched this and I was like, I mean, I could see it.
They were trying to get
Like noir needs.
It's just
noir
it's a
needs
maybe it's a
whole
selling
different
point.
set of things.
It's very much a crime movie of its era that would very soon after this migrate to television. It's not the kind of movie that you would see made anymore about a single corruption case as much. You know what I mean?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that you can't do just because, I think it is of its time in that the police and the way they acted still had kind of a carte blanche to cross that line in order to save the day.
Historically speaking, like Miranda rights were like brand new. Like if I think Miranda rights, you're the Jeopardy champs, you might know, like 1971 or 2 is when the Miranda rights thing happened. So like this is very early in that. So yes, it is very much of the time in terms of the way the police behaved, and so it might be a surprise to some people. But I think also this idea of rogue cops, we have become a little desensitized to that. So let's. I think we've gilded the lily on John Wayne a little bit. So let's talk about. I think we exhausted the John Wayne conversation. So let's talk about some of the other characters that I think this is what Jim was talking about. I think some of the peripheral characters, a few, had some really nice layers. Jim talked about the one cop who didn't make it past the first 5 minutes. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about Diana Muldaur here, who I had some really nice color here, I think her apparent apathy and cynicism that bordered on nihilism fed nicely into the narrative. And given, again, a lot of these actors on an island, I thought that was pretty impressive. Jim, it's been a couple weeks, so I don't remember character names, but Diana Muldaur is the grieved wife or grieving wife or whatever.
Yeah, I'm hold on, I'll check her name because I do.
I have it written.
Lois. Her name was Lois.
Okay, so I'll back you again, Jim. So Jim, Diana Muldaur is Lois, the grieving wife.
Yeah, I mean that's the I think I mentioned Colleen Dewhurst before, but I thought Diana.
Yeah, I'll get to her just one at a time.
Okay, well, but yes, I think Diana Muldaur was doing overtime work, and that she actually had, in a lot of ways, the weight of the entire movie ends up on her shoulders. And without spoiling too much, but she has a critical scene with critical information, and the way that she has to play that information really makes the movie work or not work.
But also it doesn't feel disingenuous when it happens because of all the work she did in all those other scenes. In terms of some of the sort of more dreamy kind of strange ideas that she had, or some of her ennui or supposed ennui, all these things she's playing in these somewhat innocuous scenes or seemingly innocuous scenes that wind up paying off. And so it's a fully crafted performance in that way, from my perspective. Let's see if Nick agrees. Before I cut you, Nick, maybe tilt down a little bit. Maybe it's a little too much headroom.
Oh, for me?
No, Nick. I just didn't want to cut to him until he was ready.
Is that better?
That is much better. All right, so Nick, Diana Muldaur is Lois.
Yes. I there was nothing really that quite stood out to me. She was pretty calm, pretty straightforward. I thought it was funny, interesting how. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but at one point, the one scene, she kind of flipped and was like, how much can I say about the movie?
It's a classic. So, there was one classic I didn't want to spoil, but this one I think we can talk a little more freely about. It's not like that big of a twist. So
yeah,
I think we're fine.
Well, where she's grieving, and she's a widow now, and so she's grieving, and she says, hey, stay the night, essentially. You want to drink? They start drinking. It's super quick, but, stay the night. And I said, man, I almost saw it coming. But I think she handled herself pretty well throughout the movie. I'm excited to talk about Myra, Colleen.
All right, Colleen Dewhurst. All right, everyone wants to talk about Colleen Dewhurst, so I'll just go straight to it.
I really enjoyed her character. I really did.
Well, quite frankly, Colleen Dewhurst, if you don't know her work, she's always fabulous. She's one of the great all-time American actresses. It's a small part, but she makes the most of it. There's a small aspect of her that her character Myra. There's a small part of her that holds on to hope for a better tomorrow, and when that hope is triggered, she lights up, or she allows herself to give in to that hope. It's almost like the hope is the drug she's more addicted to than the hard stuff. One doesn't see layers like that in fringe characters in films like these. And because it's so unique, even in the context of this film, you have to think that's Colleen doing that extra work that Jim was talking about. Nick, you get to go first. Colleen Dewhurst.
Yeah, I think Jim hit it right on the head. She did the work, and she really tied her part together. She really put a lot of the movie together for me, and it was super engaging. Her every choice that she made when it came, like you're saying, the hard stuff or the hope that she was really wanting, she really brought it all together and completely engaging for me the whole time, which is big for me. And she flipped so quickly. She said, "You're a bear, and I don't like bears." And then immediately flipped it. I said, "Man, he didn't even try." But it was such a fun moment, and just seeing her whole transition. Every time she came on the screen, I was like, I was locked in again.
But she made that flip work, right? Because you knew even when she said the thing, "I don't like bears," you didn't quite believe her. She's like almost trying to convince herself.
Correct.
Jim.
Well, I mean, I think the real testament to her acting in this movie is in her scenes with John Wayne. You know, even though what I had said before, she made John Wayne a better actor in those scenes. He softens to her. She's the only character he softens.
That's a good point.
In the whole movie. And I think that there, as an actor, John Wayne is engaged more with Colleen Dewhurst in their scenes together than anybody else in the movie.
The way he used to be with Maureen O'Hara in all the films they did together.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think that is all because she was able to take a role that could have been a throwaway role, to any other actress.
That's what stood out to me about it as well.
Embodied it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, she was the standout of the whole movie.
It sounds like we're all saying that, Nick.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and that is for me too. Although I don't want to begrudge what Diana Muldaur is doing because I think her transition in particular was tricky. But in fairness, based on what Jim is saying, Diana Muldaur's character is written a little better. Not much. But
not much.
So I got a couple more things and performances I want to talk about. The other star in the movie, although he's always been a character actor his whole life, is Eddie Albert. And one thing we do see a lot in this genre is the ambitious chief of police that doesn't want the rogue cop on his staff to muck up all his plans. And to me, Eddie Albert just seemed really unhappy in this thankless flat role. It was a paycheck job. He'd be much happier a year later when he got to do Disney's Escape to Witch Mountain. I think he quits himself a lot better there. But here, I just think he seemed miserable. He was miserable. He was so one note, script and him. But unlike Colleen Dewhurst's part was one note, and she brought a lot to it. He did not. That's my opinion. Eddie Albert, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the problem. Is like I was, Colleen Dewhurst had such a small role and a side role at that, and where I should have been putting my attention to these police scenes and the interaction with the police, I was totally checked out. In no part to Eddie Albert, and you got the sense
just writing wise, same tired old dialogue. McHugh, I'll suspend you, McHugh, or
I kept thinking of the Simpsons, like McBain, with all of these.
But that is based on that, they didn't get McBain out of a vacuum.
Yeah, I mean it's just, and it felt like every single scene with him was basically they just took the same lines and just put them in a different order.
Yeah.
And then I feel free to cut this if you want to say it would spoil, but at the end, no consequences. It's like reset to square one. Everything is fine.
I mean, like that's like 40% of the movies that we watch, though. I mean, like
I mean, especially like there's actually, it feels like there's vitriol. Like at one point, Eddie Albert is like, and that's why I'm your boss, basically. And
well, I mean, the impression is one of them is political and the other one is not, and like that's why he's the boss. Like that was my impression, but I've also seen that 1,000 times before. But whatever. But I mean, like I also feel like in the end they just wanted to end that movie as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, don't they literally end by like going to the bar or something?
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
That's how we solve our problems, us guys. Like we were enemies. I realized that I was wrong, and so let's drink it off. Nick, Eddie Albert.
I kind of think that that wasn't actually in the script. They just all three of them were just like,
yeah. John Wayne's like, I'm gonna die soon anyway. Let's drink.
Serge is like, yeah, just keep it in there. Just great.
I mean, they were all old at this point. Serge is just pretty old too by the time he made this. I didn't research it, but I assume since he was working since the 50s. Nick, Eddie Albert.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Very flat, very one note. Didn't really bring too much to it that really brought me in and made me say, man, he is killing it. Or like, I want to know more about this character. It was the standard cut and paste, like typical police chief.
And you probably wouldn't know that this was like he's a pretty big name, or at least A- B name. Wouldn't you say, Jim, in film history, Eddie Albert?
Yeah.
Oscar-nominated actor.
He had a career. People would know, if Eddie Albert in a film is I don't know if he's a draw, but he's a name.
Right.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And he wasn't to Nick. So I'm saying Nick, you probably didn't recognize Eddie Albert, right?
Mm-mm.
So point is that he's a named guy in this like very random character that had nothing to him.
Yeah.
So Jim, I'm going to challenge you to name one Eddie Albert performance that Nick should watch, and maybe you'll remember his Oscar-nominated performance.
Oh, I can't remember his Oscar-nominated performance.
No, can you name any performances? Because one of the famous ones is in a musical.
One of the famous ones is in a musical.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually wrote down.
Don't look it up. You're not allowed to look it up. This is trivia time.
I mean, I know I do like The Longest Day. That
everybody's in The Longest Day. That's just John Wayne's in The Longest Day.
Yeah. Well, yes, I know.
Eddie Albert's Oscar-nominated performance is in Roman Holiday.
That was actually the only other movie that I wasn't going to be able to name. So
okay, there you go. That's perfect. And his musical is he's the Persian peddler in Oklahoma, the movie version. So Jim, you should be ashamed of yourself. Why were you on Jeopardy and I wasn't? That's what I want to know. Anyway, so there's I don't have a singular performance that I wanted to talk about, but I did notice something during the movie, and this more or less speaks to John Sturges as a director, because I want to talk about a lot of these peripheral characters en masse, with the exceptions. I named some exceptions in terms of Moldauer and Dewhurst, like the women, and the actor that played the partner in the beginning, all did some good turns. But these other smaller parts in the piece, various victims or stoolies or suspects, a lot of them to me were flat out terrible, to the point where I'm pretty sure Sturges replaced their voices in ADR. Like that's how bad they were. I noticed that a lot.
Same.
So I just feel like, for the basic strength of some of the performances, these day players to me are very distracting and a huge mark against John Sturges' directions. He needed to cast better and help these actors that were confused or over the top or whatever it was. And he, as a director, he's just not interested in that. Or Nick, it sounds like you noticed this as well.
Yeah, definitely. There's a few times. JC was okay at times, but overall, it just felt like there wasn't much being added, and I was just looking forward to Colleen Dwars and John Wayne and the car chase scenes, and it was times I was looking forward to the scene ending, which is why I was saying in the beginning the pace was nice, but there was times where I felt like the scenes really kind of dragged out, and maybe that's because the secondary acting was so like, what's happening here?
Yeah, and I wasn't gonna call him out by name because he's come up in a bunch of 1974 films so far, but I mean, Al Letteri seems like he the only good performance he ever gave was The Godfather, and then it's all downhill from there. Jim, tell me about these side performances. What did these peripheral day player parts?
I mean, I feel like they were also given it felt for the most part like they were filling an archetype. Santiago needed to be Santiago.
You think it's the writing thing?
I think it was a writing thing. I mean, look, David Huddleston, who I actually really like. He's always that little character actor, and he normally turns in a great performance. And as Pinky, he's just in so few scenes. I was excited when I saw him, and then it was just diminishing returns, where I was like, oh, there's nothing for him to do.
Yes, but I mean, I imagine that's true of a lot of his parts that he brings more to with better directors potentially, and so I understand the lines are what they are, but I mean, you especially for flat characters, because writers are supposed to write flat characters, especially for the supporting parts. It's the actor's job, I think, to give this person a backstory and breathe life into him. And I'm not just blaming the actors, because the director needs to be there too, and the director needs to give them some guidance, or this is too much, this is too little.
So I feel like Santiago in specifically, because I think that Al Lettieri, I think given there could have been a lot more that one could have done with this role, right?
100%.
But I also feel like, and this gets a little bit into the T word, and like kind of like where
Nick might know it.
What's
Doesn't
the
know
T
what
word?
it is yet. You'll find out. Oh, baby.
I want to talk too much, but I think they needed Santiago to be that one-dimensional because it fit sort of the idea of who that of what they needed him to be in the film. Like they wouldn't have. I don't think Sturges would have let him be more.
Assuming
more
Sturges
morally
had a
gray.
T word in mind, which he may not have.
I mean, I feel like they needed him to be very black and white and not morally gray at all. And I think a morally gray Santiago with depth and layers and like some sort of like inner life would have been much more interesting and would have made the movie more complicated. And I don't think they wanted the complication in the movie.
Well, yes, certainly John Sturges does not do complicated, except for Bad Day at Black Rock, which is
is an amazing movie.
Yeah. Speaking of, I mean, like, I might move this around, and because I meant to say this when we were talking about John Wayne, so I'm going to backtrack and talk about John Wayne real quick before we move on from performances, is because what some of you out there, and I think Jim knows, maybe he doesn't, I'm currently working on a book. Writing a book of the top 100 greatest screen performances of all time, based on acting, like actual acting quality, not the best characters. So no, Jim, Darth Vader's not going to make it. Luke Skywalker's not going to make it because Mark Hamill, God love him, was not ready as an actor when he was playing Luke Skywalker. So we're talking about acting and great in terms of acting choices. And believe it or not, as much as we complain about John Wayne will make the book, for one particular performance. And I bet you Jim could guess which one that is.
The Searchers.
It would have to be, right? Like that's from an acting point of view, it's where he really does some amazing stuff. So I bet you Nick hasn't seen The Searchers.
I have not.
Yeah. You're going to walk away with this with some homework, Nick.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes me want to revisit a lot of John Wayne movies, especially like older Wayne. Like I want to go back. It's been years since I've seen The Shootist, and I kind of want to watch that now.
His final film.
Yeah.
But he won his Oscar for a film called True Grit.
True Grit.
Heard of that.
Remake. No, you heard about the remake with Jeff Bridges.
Okay.
But the original had John Wayne in the Jeff Bridges part, and John Wayne won the Oscar. But also every St. Patrick's Day, we watched The Quiet Man at my house, which is another John Wayne, Maureen O'Hara film. And of course, his first big starring role is at the Ringo Kid in Stagecoach in 1939. That was it's just his charm just oozes off the screen in that particular film. Like it's not a great performance, but his persona is born. So anyway, that's a little John Wayne homework. I'm going to move on to talk about the thing that Jim's been aching to talk about in terms of his negative. It's a screenplay kind of thing, and it's a mixed bag for me. Jim talked about the opening, and I really like the efficiency with which the film begins, with the primal scene of the case, and it just unfolds from there, like the case of the week on Adam 12. And to that end, I do feel like the film may have felt like kind of flat overall because it's the kind of thing that would migrate to the small screen shortly after this. It's the kind of thing that would migrate to the small screen shortly after this. As a story for a full movie, it feels somewhat thinner, but that might just be a modern desensitization. Modern desensitization. Wow, that's a tough one. Modern desensitization. Yes. As a story for a full movie, it somehow feels thinner, but that might just be a modern desensitization. Whilst I kind of internally predicted the conclusion, I was still satisfied by enough twists and turns to make me occasionally doubt myself. But truthfully, any other outcome might have felt disingenuous. But that seemed like a possibility too, that the script would be disingenuous. But plot-wise, I do feel like you could have substituted Clint Eastwood or Richard Widmark or any of those guys into this film, and the results would have been the same. McHugh's just another. It's just another sort of like template for these kinds of films. It's boilerplate, highly unoriginal, save for some details here and there, like Seattle, for example. However, I do feel like it's an effective template and competently executed. Like many of its contemporaries, save for Dirty Harry, it cynically acknowledges the penchant for corruption of the time with little exploration. It was a convenient excuse and not so much a theme, if you can see the distinction. So I do feel like that it was formulaic, Jim, but the formula did not work completely for me.
It's the formula. I think there's a reason why these movies were made all through. Well, why many of them were made. Why that the tropes continue on to this day. Why you still have sort of like procedurals and even movies like John Wick, which is there is a MacGuffin and there is a sledgehammer that has to go through armies to get to it. I think in particular with this movie, I think it has a few problems. One is the opening is so effective and the action is so effective that you miss that days afterwards, I was trying to reconcile how John Wayne got to the conclusion at the end. The whole like, oh, well, this is why. And it wasn't until I realized that the car that he drives around in the beginning is John Wayne's car. But I never paid attention to it because I was focusing on the action. And without that detail, without me thinking of that detail, and I think Sturges deliberately went out of his way to not really
telegraph it,
draw attention, because if you know that, then the rest of the movie is flat. Right. Like, I think that it takes so much air out of the rest of the movie. So you have this huge literal thing that you have to hide. And I felt that they hit it so well that it didn't dawn on me until days afterwards how it worked and how he figured it out. And I was really it gnawed at me. I think too is he was so efficient in his direction that there were parts in the screenplay like the death of Boyle where it became a very where it could have been a show us in 2 scenes or whatever, instead became they show up in black and he says, "We just came from the funeral." And I was like, I guess time has passed. And that is how we find out that a character has died.
Yeah. Well, you knew he wasn't going to do well. You did see him get shot, I believe, several times.
I mean, the doctor said, "How is he?" First of all, when they're in the hospital right next to the guy, and it was like, well, this is the 70s, and it's no antiseptic whatsoever. If the doctor was smoking, I wouldn't have been surprised. But when they're like, "How is he?" and he's like, "Critical," but critical is still alive.
I guess so. I mean, I sort of knew that it was somehow. I knew it was going to.
I mean, look, I did not have great expectations for him. I figured they would have given him the decency of some sort of minor acknowledgement in scene, or not just, well, we just came from the funeral.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of disagree on that point because I think I just feel like it was the next logical scene. If you're talking about efficiency in screenplay or the edit, that's the next thing that needs to happen. I don't know that we needed more than that. Unless it's a big character thing. Did you want John Wayne to break down at his bedside or something? Is that what you're looking for?
I don't even know if we needed to see that. It could have just been a decrease, a heart monitor that goes flat, or a sheep being pulled over his face. Just something that let us know that this has happened now and that the next scene can go on. It
I
felt
don't
a
think you need
little
it.
jumpy.
I don't think you need it. I honestly think. I think the funeral, like somebody's in critical condition. Cut to the funeral, and then like I don't know. Like I
Look,
feel like
if they had even spent 2 seconds at the funeral, if there was the very standard bunch of
Dozen
people at the
standing
funeral where they could have had that conversation as they were leaving. Do you want to go? Do you want to have a drink? Great. But I think maybe it just was sort of a whiplash for me to have this scene where they'd already been together, and then all of a sudden we just buried my husband, so I guess I'm at your boat now.
Yeah.
Have a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, yeah, no, that doesn't bother me. But I do want to get back. I hold on. It's 11 now, so I just have some things I needed to.
We did start late. Sorry, I blame Vic for that. Please edit that out and burn that.
Me too.
Burn that.
Burn it. Okay. Yeah, I just needed to check something. All right. So that's that. But we started late. But we are. Okay. 2. I'll take it. Okay. So I want to get back to the original comment though about figuring out the ending, and none of it seemed disingenuous to me. I agree. I didn't put together the car necessarily, but I was suspecting the eventual perpetrators. Anyway, there were other breadcrumbs I was following. The only thing I was missing was the how, kind of a thing, like how that all played out. So, it did it. I guess the question is, did it feel disingenuous to? Because I feel like any other ending might have felt disingenuous given all the other things that were happening. So the ending that it did occur made sense to me, and the car was just like the final piece. But the picture was pretty clear to me heading into it, not in an unsatisfying way, but
it made sense to me when I had that realization, and then every other thing that happens in the movie is completely justified. Like, oh. That's why he wakes up and there's a guy trying to break into his car. Like, it wasn't an act. Like everything else follows of like why there's like that he is McHugh is the person who's needs to catch up. What we're really watching that whole movie is McHugh catching up to where everybody else already is,
except for us. And that's, we call that limited perspective. We only know, a lot of detective movies are like this. We know what the character knows and nothing more, as opposed to a general perspective where we know more, like North by Northwest, where we know more than the character knows. We know there's no George Kaplan.
And the thing is, I don't know unless you had like a flashback at some point where it was very clear, where we know already, we know that Boyle is driving we see the scene again, but instead of focusing on Boyle, they were a little bit more focused on the car, where we see that it's McHugh's car.
But why do we need to see that? Like, I mean, I enjoyed being, surprised by that final puzzle piece. Like, why did that feel missing to you?
Because for me, because I didn't make the connection in that first 5 minutes. The ending,
is that on the movie or is that on you?
I don't know, but I think I don't think it is clear, and I don't think it can be clear that it is McHugh's car, because if it is McHugh's car, then to your point, it's no longer a limited perspective. Right. We know something that McHugh doesn't know, that it's his car, and that all of this that it's being used for nefarious purposes.
Right. And so
the least subtle car in Seattle.
That's why he's being suspected by, the Eddie Albert character and, all these other things.
Yeah. Once I made that connection, the rest of the movie falls incredibly into place. But I didn't make that connection because I wasn't paying attention to the car that Boyle was driving the first 5 minutes. I was paying attention to Boyle and what he was doing.
What they wanted you to do. Like, I feel like this is that's the choice that they made, and I'm gonna let Nick get in here because it just feels like everything you're saying is like, yeah, that was good. That was a good thing about it. So I'm missing like the downside here, Nick. there's a couple things. I'm confused about Jim's problem, but also all the things that I said about the screenplay. So you can choose what you want to talk about here.
I can sum it up in one line. But I was dissatisfied because I was not able to make the connection at the reveal. So I was not satisfied with that until I realized.
Okay.
In the moment, it felt like an arbitrary thing when I was watching the movie.
Okay.
And I didn't get it because I wasn't supposed to get it in the beginning. And then days later, when I was thinking about it, I realized that opening thing, and it wasn't until I realized that the rest of the movie sort of fell into piece.
I realized it while watching the movie. So it's a similar thing. It just, happened fast.
Yeah, I just missed.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be on your phone while watching movies that we're going to review.
I wasn't on my phone, except for the Eddie Albert scenes. Because
fair. Nick, sorry about this.
No. In short, I mean, I think I share similar sentiments to you, JB. I didn't notice it in the beginning, but I am also a fan of the surprise. And at the end, I was like, oh my God, no way. And everything started connecting. It started to make sense. Why this, why that, why this, why that. The guy breaking in the car. And I thought it was clever and how you didn't know. And I didn't know in the very beginning. And I think had I had known, we would have, like you said, lost that limited perspective. And that would have changed the movie for me in probably a negative way. So I really appreciated the surprise behind it. I'm also a fan of surprises in general. My mind is constantly trying to figure out movies and what's happening next and what's going on. So I enjoy the fact that I didn't quite notice that. And I think it was revealed properly. And I thought it was great, honestly.
I think you articulated that better than I did. So and I think it's none of the plotting is anything that I've had issues with. My issues from a script point of view happen to do with characterizations that felt flat, a lot too many, and also a lack of thematic exploration, which I'll get to. But Jim, you talk about plot holes. Are there other plot holes that you didn't mention? Because that's where I wasn't sure about.
The thing that what was it? The straining of whatchamacallit? Sorry, it's late here.
I'm in the same time zone you are, bud.
I know.
Cut him some TV.
What did I say? Suspension of disbelief. Yeah. The straining of suspension of disbelief. Yeah. You have the most noticeable car in Seattle.
Sure.
And you decide to follow a laundry van with the most identifiable car in Seattle, and your method of following them is directly behind for miles and miles and miles.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Extreme tailgating. I said, man, you got to give it at least a car link, but he was riding them.
It's like
it's interesting. It's a fair point. It did not occur to me in the moment, though. So I give the film some credit, but not all of us are criminal masterminds like you, Jim, to be able to do something like that. So, but it's a fair point. And if he did follow from further back, I would have appreciated that level of detail. So I did like.
That was like one of the big things. It was like.
In that same sequence, though, I did like the switcheroo. Like, I do think that
was clever.
Yeah, the rest of the exiting that building,
sure,
great, masterful.
Yeah, and
okay,
when the scene happened where the vehicle switched, I thought, what would I do in that moment? You have to make a decision. Which one do you choose? You have a 50-50 chance, and what would be your reasoning on choosing which other one? I couldn't really quite figure out which one would I stick with the first based off of what, or would I go with this one because it had a sudden movement that would have caught my attention but I mean, he did feel like he was being followed. He acknowledged it. And that's why he exited, but he had nothing to hide clearly, but we didn't know that. And John Wayne didn't know that.
And it was a great button. That was a great button to the whole scene of being like, I thought you were going to kill me. I thought you were chasing me.
Yeah.
Of like, of course I drove crazy.
Yeah, no, agreed on all that point. So I think it's time for us to move on to Jim's favorite sequence that we've been teasing all night. It looks like we're going to have some disagreement on it, though, because I don't have a lot of great stuff on it because it feels like a stretch for this film. But sequence is called, Jim?
The T word.
It is time.
Do you want me to actually say the word?
It is time for the T word. This is where we talk about the themes of a film. The founder of our show, Drunk Davey, didn't like to talk about themes. He thought it was like doing homework. So we always used to dance around it, called it the T word, and a segment was born. And I've got a couple of things here that I wanted, that the movie made me think about. I'm not sure how intentional they were, but I thought I'd throw them out there, see what landed. I really have one that I think is part of the movie almost unintentionally, and one that I think is what the movie should have been. So I'll start with the unintentional one. And honestly, it wasn't John Wayne's fault at first. John Ford put him in this position, but John Wayne took it and ran with it. Actually, I'm going to start that over. And so I've got a couple different themes here. I'm not sure if either of them are really intentional. I've got one that I think is it's an unintentional thing that I was thinking about during the movie, and I've got another one that I think is what the movie should have been about or could have been about, baked within the, in between the lines of the script. So I'm going to start with the unintentional one, and I'm calling this reactionary masculinity. And it wasn't his fault at first. John Ford put him in this position, but John Wayne took it and ran with it. But for multiple generations, John Wayne represented the masculine ideal for men, meaning it's not like he was the kind of man that women wanted. He was the kind of man that other men wanted to be. It was kind but tough, lived by a moral code, and got violent when anyone else violated that code. That was considered appropriate and fair only when he decided it was called for. That persona weaves its way into this, but slightly evolved for a new, very different, more complex era. Like this film's spiritual godfather, Dirty Harry, McHugh, film and character, are something of a rebellion against rebellion. The concept of masculinity had evolved to include some of the younger and extreme liberal concepts of the new generations, the Peter Fondas of the world, if you will. A whole segment of society suggested masculinity was about questioning the establishment, fighting back either by protest or by refusal to participate in the social structures. Films like this and Dirty Harry and Coogan's Bluff are the response of the older generation, or as Nixon called them, the silent majority. I can't tell you how many films I've seen where Clint Eastwood, I can't tell you how many Clint Eastwood films I've seen that depicts him kicking the shit out of hippies, just cuz. While this film doesn't have that per se, its spirit is sort of on the periphery. It's the response of the older generation to this brave new world. Interestingly, McHugh is a rebel in his own right. He plays by his own rules, but in his mind, in the service of justice, made necessary by a world that's passed him by, whose rules have let him down. In that way, although neither would ever acknowledge it, there's a lot of overlap between John Wayne's masculinity and that of the younger generation that he treats with such disdain. They've both given up on the system. The difference is the younger generation believes systems in general have no value in an individualistic society, while McHugh and his generation believes in the idea of the system but feel like it's been warped by bad people, possibly because of the disregard of the younger generation. McHugh and the silent majority are mad and they're not going to take it anymore. Again, I'm not suggesting this is intentional in the film, but to me it hangs over the cliff. I'm not suggesting this is intentional in the film. But it hangs over it like a cloud given some historical perspective. There seems to have been a global schism in terms of the nature of masculinity, and McHugh seems to make an argument for the old gunslinging cowboy ways in spite of a modern world that seems to want to move on. So I've got reactionary masculinity here is what I'm calling this, Jim. It's maybe overcomplicated, but it's what I was thinking about during the movie and immediately after.
I completely agree with you. In fact, when I wrote my little thing, I wrote down, this is an old person's movie. And kind of exactly what you were saying, where the problems are, you look at what is regarded as the problems, and it is everybody is so quick to blame the radicals, the radical
The
youth.
long hairs.
Yeah. Even, and McHugh, I think, would have been just as happy if he didn't think that it was Santiago, that he already had a thing. So if it wasn't for the Mexicans with the drugs or the radicals, it would be a great world. Completely ignoring the rampant police corruption, which never gets acknowledged, other than he was a bad cop. So it's they are not looking, they're completely eyes out looking for the problem. Again, I think completely inadvertently highlighting this sort of ethos, this reaction to the reaction ethos of pointing out the hypocrisy of this corrupt state that they are propping up, and pointing fingers at what they perceive to be the real problems, and not listening to either of those things. In fact, when the one, you mentioned beating up a hippie, there is that scene in the movie where he slips on a chair.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For literally no reason, go ahead, take a punch. Okay. And it is deemed as justified. I mean, McHugh himself is a product of, as we talked about before, of a police state that does not see a line, that does not have a line. It is simply what they need to do to get the job done. And if that involves going in and taking a punch, and punching their way to get a confession or what have you, that is a means to an end, and it is expected to be applauded.
And the question is, does the end justify the means?
Yes. Yes. The end absolutely justifies the means.
Right.
In this case.
And I agree with everything you said, and you articulated beautifully as well. And with the exception of one thing, it's not really an exception, but I do want to point out, you called it an old person's movie, and I can certainly see that with John Wayne here. However, I mean, Clint Eastwood was a young man still. So I don't know if it's about age so much as it is about, political point of view to some degree.
Yeah, I first wrote, this is a conservative movie, and I don't mean it in a political, in our current understanding of what conservative means. Right. I mean it absolutely as a yearning for a before time. Yeah. Of like whatever the good old days was, when youth looked up to their elders in the system and respected it, and the elders looked down benevolently and wisely and led them on. And that is what I think, underneath the gunplay and the car chases and everything else, and a MAC-10 submachine gun that is completely illegal and no questions asked, mowing down bad guys. Like there's that is I think underneath all of it a really good reading of this movie, whether you agree with it or not. And yeah, Jonathan, I completely agree with you that is not what they intended, but I think all of these movies to a degree or another completely express this yearning for
a frustration with the progress, or frustration with the evolution or the way the world was going. And I think, like you've seen Dirty Harry and Coogan's Bluff and some of these other movies, you can see the connection between these films. Harrigan with Richard Widmark.
Look at Death Wish with Bronson, which is even further into vigilantism and disregard
that's 1974. For the law. That's coming up on, I don't know if we'll specifically do a review of it because it's too similar, but that's this year.
Yeah. And I mean, it is I think it's a more extreme version of this. Mm-hmm. Like you don't need the law. You just need to set things straight. There needs to be a reckoning
for the good before these long hairs take over the world.
Yeah.
So without having seen any of these movies that we're banding about here, Nick, what do you think about what we're saying?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it wasn't something I quite considered or really noticed until you guys are speaking about it now. And it makes sense. It's like, because I'm the law, I am the law, I do no wrong, and you look up to me regardless. And it's everybody else's fault, even though hey, McHugh, that gun isn't licensed. I'm not either. He just takes it. But
I mean,
that's
like
okay.
that sort of vigilantism or rogue copness, like it was
Correct.
admired because he's standing up for what's right.
Correct. He can break the rules, break the law because he's above the law, because he's protecting the law at the same time. But it's like, that's not how that works. And it's the whole, the cigarettes and the coffee in the morning, and like you said, the masculinity. Would you say the inadvertent? No, would you say
reactionary masculinity? And that's sort of making it a political thing, because I see it as a reaction to the liberal hippieism, what I should say is I see it as a reaction to the counterculture, and how masculinity is evolving for the youth of America in a way that is softer, more mild, less violent, all peace and love and all that sort of thing. But, and drugs, and, but that also means dropping out of school. That means, not participating in a system, that means, campuses, being protests on campuses and things like that, that are getting in the way of the Vietnam War, or, a functioning government is being interrupted by, these idealists, these, bleeding heart idealists that don't understand the real world, and someone needs to fight back or teach them a lesson or something. That's what I sort of mean by reactionary.
Exactly right. Exactly what I saw in the same.
And I will say, I think that John Wayne portraying this character carries a little bit more of that message than
100%. The persona based on his own political viewpoints and that he carried with him, but also, this idea of, and I think you agree with me too, he represented masculinity like almost by himself for many, many years in cinema.
And more so, and I think this reading is more particular for this film than something like Dirty Harry, just because Clint Eastwood, I don't think, had that same sort of yet. But I mean, especially given him being younger, I think that I also think that Dirty Harry is a little bit more into a caricature. I think did you lose me?
No. Nope.
Am I back? Okay, great. My camera light went out. I think so. I think Dirty Harry. I think Dirty Harry's a little bit more heightened caricature, where John Wayne's cop is almost a more believable cop as McHugh than Clint Eastwood as Harry Callahan.
Right.
Who
but
feels
also
sort of like
the situation, I don't want to say what Harry does is justifiable, but at least in the original film, we're talking about a very unhinged serial killer based on the Zodiac killer. And so, and at one point he kidnaps a school bus full of children. So, it's almost like pushing the envelope to get us to Dirty Harry time. You know what I mean?
It's that Batman problem. You need to have, the villain needs to have the hero needs to have a villain that's equal to him. Right.
Or is willing, for Dirty Harry's methods to make sense, we needed a villain just that bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nick, anything else on this before I go to the other quasi theme?
No, I will say the part where he fell into the chair and the long hair. That's such a great analogy or observation, even, and completely explaining the T word.
Don't mind me. I have to check train times.
Okay. Just when I needed a reaction shot of you. Here, I'll get a reaction shot of myself. Oh, you got it? I need a reaction shot of you. All right. Nick's saying something fascinating, Jim.
Something fascinating.
Oh.
Don't overdo it. I thought you were an actor.
He's an actor. That's what he killed that.
That's the kind of direction that John Sturges should have given.
Honestly.
All right, settle down. Give me 5 seconds just staring. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm going to move on to this other quasi theme here that I've got going on. It's a theme that I think was on the fringes, but one that I think the film and script failed to bring to the fore. I mentioned earlier that I appreciated the efficiency with which the film starts, but we don't get a real sense of the circumstances that created the situation. What were the economic realities that would lead to this particular turn of events? And I do think that could have been explored in retrospect. So you don't have to mess with the excellent beginning to have explored this. For example, McHugh has a cool boat, which highlights his isolation. But that and the cool car suggests an at least comfortable financial situation. If that weren't the case, if he were struggling to pay bills, we might understand some of his colleagues' behavior through him. Beauty, I think, is found in the gray areas, and as many of these kinds of films as there are, only the ones that dip their toe in those waters ever amount to anything special. So I think there could have been really something more done about the economic realities that created the crimes that he was investigating. Like there could have been something about, what police were being paid or what they were losing money. Usually if there's police corruption, it's because police aren't feeling like they're not being paid enough or what have you. Like there's an economic hardship that forces people to commit the crimes. And I wish there was more of that or some of that. But some of the cops just seem pretty well off with, like, McHugh is clean, but he's doing pretty well. Yeah. And what did he invest his money? And, there's no E-Trade or anything. So I just feel like I wish there's something. They left this breadcrumb on the table here with this idea that could have made this movie something even better if they had taken the time to look into the economic realities of the capitalism of the era. And it was a very hard time, the oil crisis and things like that. The economy was in a bad state. So if they had taken the time to explore that, and to Jim's point, that might have rounded out the villains even more. And maybe that's not what they were going for, but that would have been more compelling to me and made this movie maybe something more than just a boilerplate kind of, crime, cops and robbers kind of movie. Nick, I've got capitalism and economics.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't quite considered. And that I completely agree. Like you said, there was a breadcrumb on the table that they really could have explored a little deeper. And that would give even just a little bit of a backstory or reasoning or some semblance of a reason why things were the way they were and people made the decisions that they made, going against the law, against their job, or against their better judgment. Thus also helping explain McHugh's, clearly he's a good cop, which means he's happier at his job because he's probably getting paid more, hence the boat and the nice car that everybody can recognize, and the nice car that's better than every other car in the movie per se.
If it were a crappy boat, or if it were like a cool cheap car, like a Duster that's still kind of cool, or something like that. And but also, I think too, like it could have more explored the economic realities for women, because with the Lois character, women of her generation were not much in the workforce, and we see a little bit of McHugh's ex-wife, if I remember correctly, who married well, and so a lot of women are have their income reliant on men, and so if they were seen more struggling, like her desperation might have been understood more if there was more of a helplessness. In other words, the only way that she could ever really make a difference was to, do this horrible thing. So like, these are the things I'm thinking about that I felt like were there in between the lines, and they just let them be. And it might have made it interesting. I don't know. It's a theory.
Maybe that's why they chose for Myra. They chose her house and her situation. I'm not going to get too far into it, but maybe that's why they made the choices they made. And I think overall, if they were to lean in a little more to that, that would be a mirror to show how that era was dealing with things and how they chose to deal with it, and how or chose to not deal with it, or lie to themselves and say, we are doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, and there's certainly been movies where we see cops like not doing well financially, or their places are a mess, and they're live in a 1-bedroom apartment or something like that, and whatever it is, like that might have been something there that they could have mined, and I never would have justified the behavior of the corrupt officials, but it might have.
It would have explained it a little.
Well, and also like might have said like there's something broken about the way capitalism is working right now, or maybe it's about, you know, police being not, you know, paid enough or treated fairly. Like maybe there's something about that that would have fit in with the Republican agenda at the time. But either way, it's, you know, it wasn't there, and it was just the plot. And I think it's in the plot. They didn't have to do much to make this work.
Great observation. Yeah.
Jim.
I mean, John Wayne does say that, you know, when it was the internal affairs guy, that was his job. Mm-hmm. When he was like, "Oh, I like your car. Can I you know, I'd like to have your car." And he's like, "You can have the payments that go with it." And so at least he acknowledged that the car, it was expensive.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was one of the things that I was kind of like, why, you know, why other than just cupidity was Boyle involved in, you know, what were these cops involved in the grift? Lois lives very comfortably.
Yeah.
Although to be fair, Myra looks like she lives pretty comfortably on a waitress salary.
Really less comfortably, but yeah, she has a house for, like, you know, a waitress, drug addict, prostitute. I mean, you know,
I mean, when I was a waitress,
real estate's cheap in Seattle, obviously. So maybe
that's what we've really learned, is that in the 70s.
But Jim, do you see
back when I was a waitress, drug addict, prostitute, I couldn't afford a house.
You know, he says if, but come on, guys, we all know the truth about that. Jim, do you see the potential of what I'm talking about here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that is also like it's a little bit of a different movie, but I think they could have at least.
Is it though? I think the plot remains the same. I think the plot remains the same. It's just changing details on the sides of the plot that makes this, you know, that explains their behavior, but it makes it, you know, criminals are always more interesting if we understand the crime, right? Criminality comes from somewhere.
I feel like it's more like a rock can't lose a fight. The Rock can't lose a fight type of thing. Hold on. I feel like it's more like when The Rock can't lose a fight. You can't have John Wayne living in, you know, living in these downgraded conditions. And I mean, I think
I don't love that excuse, but
I see what you mean.
But I think you could have that movie. I don't think John Wayne at this point in his career, because I know that there are movies where he is a little bit more rough and, like, you know, in the wilderness a bit. But I think in this particular role, in this particular movie, you can't have somebody like John Wayne living hand to mouth, or in the same way that you couldn't have John Wayne being, you know, like we like to make our cops now are, you know, our rugged, tough cops who are also alcoholics and have PTSD and problems. You can't give John Wayne that host of problems.
But I mean, like, you know, you know, like, she married rich? Does he not have alimony to pay or child support, or, you know, he's got that car.
I mean,
there's economic realities there that, you know, you talk about disingenuous stuff about the script or holes. Like, it feels like he should be less well off, given.
I agree. I 100% agree. Like, for all the things he has, you know, he has his daughter. Her daughter, isn't she in college at this point?
And she's in college.
Granted, like, I'm sure college in 1974 cost like a cup of coffee and $2. So, but
we didn't say it was a good college.
But yeah, I mean, I think that I do agree with you in that I think that movie could have definitely explored taken a more realistic bent to this, and it would have helped to explain a lot of the other things that happen in the movie. But
that's why I think it's not. I don't think it's a big change. I think it's like a minor shift and just a few details in there. That's how close this movie was. That's why I'm not a thumbs down. I'm more like a little bit. Like, I would say 6 or 7 out of 10. Kind of a thing. Not that I normally do numbers. I don't, but just to illustrate what I'm talking about here, like, the potential was there, and it's a small change to get it there. They could have made it
And to be clear, I'm not that far. If you're a 6 or 7, I'm like a 5-6.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thoroughly. I think I wrote down. I was like 2.5 stars.
I like the star system. It feels too limiting. But Nick, I guess we're ranking now. Do you have a number that you want to assign to this?
Because in where my life is now in production, I look at movies differently. After acting school, that's when things change. And now that I'm much more behind the scenes in more of a producer type role, I see things differently now. And so I really appreciated a lot of the little nuances about the camera angles and the camera work. And so, I mean, a little bit of the lighting here and there could have been better, but some of the choices that they made for the scenes in general, I really enjoyed it, honestly. So I'd give it like a 7.5 if we have to give it a number.
Yeah, Nick's the high. You were the only one that was full thumbs up. So
yeah.
And Nick is you haven't, like, a lot of these things that I show you, you're seeing a lot of them for the first time.
Very new eyes, yeah, from a new perspective. As somebody who, I know it's weird that I went to acting school and everything, but I'm not much of a movie watcher per se. Yeah. You forced me to watch movies, and I genuinely do appreciate it because I always learn something. I'm a big documentary and nature learning, I prefer that. But so it's really nice to have these new things. I would never have watched this movie if it weren't for you. And I'm grateful for it because I learned things. And as we kind of spoke about earlier, it felt almost at times, it almost felt like the movie was ahead of its time, but maybe like you were saying, we've become so desensitized to practicality in movies that I was like, man, they're really doing this out here. But we're not used to that so much anymore. Everything is it's easier because technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, but it also looks more fake. It's like the difference between the middle 3 Star Wars films, the first ones that come out, 4, 5, and 6, mm-hmm. versus the prequels and the sequels that don't have the same impact because we're not watching models anymore. We're watching, animation.
They also weren't as good.
Well, and the script too. Yeah, there's that. All right. Anybody have themes here that I didn't talk about that they wanted to discuss before we close out?
No, I mean, I think you really, the one that I really back you up at. I agree with this second one, but I think the reactionary masculinity, I think that is really. I mean,
that's the one that's there. I feel like, and the second was more one I wish was there. That like that's my script notes. If I were like, one more pass, guys, and make it even like really good. Nick, any more themes for you?
No. I think like the reactionary masculinity was perfectly well said and spot on.
I'm glad that worked out. So, guys, I'm going to close things out. I'm going to give these guys opportunity for closing thoughts if they had any. Nick, how do you feel?
Let Jim go first.
I just want to see if you had a good night.
Oh, like after this, right now?
Oh, never mind. I'll let Jim.
Okay, yeah, let Jim go first because I'm confused. Okay.
All right, so I just want to let All right, so I'm going to close things out.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Just stare into the camera, and I got to do a transition. All right, guys, thanks so much. I'm going to close things out and wrap things up for tonight. So I'm going to let these guys have some closing thoughts, if any. Jim, did you have fun tonight? Had you even heard of this movie before?
I always have fun. I hadn't heard of this movie before, and I'm really happy to see it. Also, I'm seeing movies from my birth year, so.
Ooh, revelation there! Like I don't let the audience know what my real age is. Nick,
you can cut that. Tonight? It's fine.
Yeah, always enjoy our conversations. Always enjoy the deep inside look and specifically your perspective on things based on your experience and knowledge. So I always look forward to that. And one thing I did want to say, I actually have it playing in the background right now. I've had it playing the whole time. The score was so.
I wanted to talk about the score.
Oh, so good. So perfect. I enjoyed it. It was such a moment in time and of its era, and it really brought a lot of things together. The sound effects, the score in general, and I love the scene at the alley. And when we talk about the practicality of how the movie was shot, that alley scene with the trucks, so good. Yeah. Because as I'm thinking behind the camera, I'm like, you really have to get everything right. Because I don't know how many cars did they have that look like this and how many chances did they have to shoot this one scene. I thought it was a spectacular job on that. John Wayne played it great. Great reveal, like overall great scene, probably my favorite scene in the movie besides all the ones with Myra.
All right, so Jim, you want to talk about the score as well?
Yeah, yeah. It was. I was actually going to ask for like one last thing to talk about, which was the score, which I wrote. I completely agree with you, Nick. Like it was such of its place and of its time. But also, I wrote down. I was like, this. Whenever it went back to John Wayne, it like I wrote down dick swinging detective music.
That's exactly right.
But you say that in a derogatory way. But if you had that in your life every time you walk down the street, you would take it.
There is nothing derogatory about that statement.
No.
That is, and it like I was like, this is it 100% fit McHugh. Like that music was his personality right there, and I thought it was great. Obviously, I wrote it down.
You did very good. All right, well, this movie went over a little better than I thought, so that's very good. Next up, our next review, Sidney Poitier directs Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor, Flip Wilson, and more in Uptown Saturday Night. And that'll be our next movie for discussion. In the meantime, I'm going to let these guys say goodbye to the audience.
Goodbye, audience.
Goodbye, audience. We appreciate you listening and being here.
And with that, this 84th meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.
84.
I have to go get Vic.
Yeah.
I was traveling, so I wasn't able to watch White Dawn, but it's on Amazon, and I'm just going to rent it and watch it.
Well, you don't need to. I wasn't going to assign it.
I'm just going to watch it because you recommended it.
I don't know if I did.
Well, you just said if you guys want to watch it, it's here. So That's enough of a recommendation. It doesn't take a lot to if you had the list, I'm going to try.
I need to get you guys to watch. There are other movies that I need you to like. I'm going to give you guys separate, different people. We're going to mix up the groupings, but I will need to get you guys to see other movies. The idea for White Dawn was if you watch it during those 2 days, I would assign it for a subsequent one down the line. But I would need to, I need to do some more scheduling with you guys based on your availability. It's basically.
Can you just set can it be like the 1942 where you just say, here are the movies from 1942?
Well, are you volunteering then to do the finale and do, 25 to 30 1974 films?
Fuck yeah. Of course.
Right.
I actually really I like exploring through the year like that.
Okay.
Awesome.
But the whole reason why we canceled the show to begin with is because people were reluctant to do that again.
Excuse me. I always tried to get.
How many 1942 movies did you watch?
At least 35.
No. You're on camera. You watched 23.
No, I didn't. I watched more than that.
Go back and watch the 1942 in review. Your number's 23. The point is,
it's because but then I did another one.
Your kids weren't in college yet.
What?
I think you were 40 something for 1947.
1947. There was one where I watched more movies then.
Yeah, 1947.
And usually for the year in review, I watched a lot.
I have the numbers. You have to go so I can pull them up later. But yeah, my point is, I would love for you to do it as long as you don't feel like you bit off more than you can chew.
I'm unemployed now, so
And you have 2 of your 3 kids are in college, so.
Yeah, I know. So I might be losing this house, but whatever. I'll just do it from a 10.
No. Okay, cool. So you go, Nick. I wanted to give you the opportunity in case. Is there anything that you want to restate or Good night, Jim. Thank you. I always give people the opportunity to restate or re-say anything. If there was something they needed to cover or something they missed. Before I turn off the recording.
No, I did say the part about the alley scene. I really wanted to mention. I really enjoyed that. Maybe we talked about. We really didn't touch on what was the name, Alberto or Santiago. I don't know. It's okay. It's all right. I wish Santiago.
We did talk about Al Lettieri because I said the only good performance he ever gave was The Godfather.
Yeah. Because this one was not it. I was not a fan of Santiago. I felt like, and we touched on it, I felt like they could have done a bit more with Santiago. He could have done a bit more with his choices. Maybe if the character just had a little more depth. But I just felt like there was kind of a missed opportunity there.
Well, he's a highly overrated actor, I've decided, after seeing him in several films from 1974, because he's so good in The Godfather. You've seen The Godfather. I showed you The Godfather.
We watched The Godfather, yes.
Yeah. Do you recognize him?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
So yeah, he dies early in the first one in the very famous diner. Salazzo, I think his character name is, but he's great in that movie with a good director. So that makes all the difference. But I mean, like, also he's the red herring in this movie, and so
true.
Like, I can see why the script didn't give him as much, because he's not as important as he may seem. Like, he's the focus of McHugh initially, but it's not really about him.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's what felt, maybe I'm not gonna say misleading, but it felt like I was missing something because they brought him in as such like a vital character. I was looking forward to Santiago, looking more forward to, but it really maybe just felt like overall Sturgis was just so focused on John Wayne, or it was the John Wayne movie show. With luckily they had Dewhurst, and thankfully we had her, but it just really felt like it was the John Wayne movie, and that was it. That was really everything else was extremely secondary.
Well, what I think Colleen Dewhurst and Diana Muldaur prove is the importance for actors to, no matter how small the part is. Like they say, there's no small parts, only small actors.
Correct.
Like it's a trope, but I mean, like, there is some truth to it, and I think Colleen Dewhurst proves that in this movie. And any actor can work hard. Like, if you work hard enough, you can figure out something to do. Now, you might not have the skill to execute or the technique to execute it like she does, but I mean, like, there's no excuse for not working hard to give your character a backstory instead of just reading lines.
Correct. One of the biggest things, the most important things you can do as an actor, besides remembering your lines, is doing your homework and giving yourself that chance to explore and open up possibilities that not even the writer, the director, anybody could have imagined. And that is what makes that a standout. Because they, like we spoke about it, they didn't really give much for her, really, but she created something out of almost nothing. Lois felt like she had a much bigger part, but she was in the shadows. I almost could have done without her, but because she had to be there because of her spouse dying in the way, and it was almost like I almost could have done pretty much without her. Just give me more Myra.
She's kind of the villain.
Yeah, exactly. And then she tries to sleep with him. I'm like, dude, don't make me dislike you more. Come on.
All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this. I'm going to try and get you on the schedule for October at some point, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I'm excited for the next one. It's going to be a 1974 one. Yeah, another one.
Yeah, that's all we're doing this year. We're trying to do just a single year so we can compare and contrast.
Are we doing the one with Cosby and Richard Pryor? Is that the one I'm doing, or something different?
Probably not, because that's the very next one. So it'll probably be another group of two, but it'll be another one that will air sooner. The Cosby one airs right after this one.
Ah, okay, I understood.
You know what I'm saying? And I need to take one that's going to air sooner, so it'll be a different film.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the next one. I feel like you picked a good one. I don't know if you picked these ones and choose us with that in mind.
I picked an order that I want them to come out in. And so
interesting.
So like, it's based on pairings and groupings.
Availability.
Like when I get you on a schedule, whatever film's next, kind of a thing.
Interesting.
As long as it's not one that airs directly before this or directly after this, kind of a thing.
Cool. Well, this one worked out. I really enjoyed it. I really did. Awesome. More than I thought I would.
Well, that's good. Well, you enjoyed Klute more than you thought you would. Simple Plan more than you thought you would.
Simple Plan was great. I was just talking about that movie the other day. It's so good. Dude.
Really good. It's really good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks again. Hope you're well. I fly back on the 1st. So
perfect. Hit me up.
Yeah. And you can't. Your parents are in town in the 23rd. You said.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
You're going to see the play this weekend. Okay. So.
Yeah, I think I might. Yeah, I might. Well, are you gonna go see the play? Because I haven't been yet. Are you gonna see it at some point?
I've not worked since June the 6th.
Oh shit.
So I'm really, really broke. So I can't go. Plus, I get along with Devin, but not Kelly anymore. So I'm not really wanted there.
Sure, that sucks.
But yeah.
No, I don't want to go.
Well, you should. No, it's a great organization.
Okay.
And
But you're my guy, so
but Devin, Devin's your guy too, and Devin's in
I
it.
do like Devin. Oh, okay. Well, that does change things. Okay.
And also, Caitlin is in it, and she's a friend of ours, and she's a great
Okay.
actor. And Caitlin, she was not in one of the screenplay readings, but do you remember Heather, redhead? She was in some of the screenplay readings. I can't remember if she was in the ones that you helped out with. Which ones did you help out with? Woman of the Year. You helped out with Woman of the Year, didn't you?
I don't think so. That doesn't sound familiar. I did.
Major and the Minor, I remember.
Yeah, and then what was the other one? What was the one we did? What was the one we did in Hollywood?
Random Harvest with the British one, Random Harvest.
Yes, that's the one. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Random Harvest. I still have that in my car. I still have the flyer. I have both of them actually.
Awesome.
Love them.
All right, man. I'm gonna close out, but I'll be in touch.
Yeah. Talk to you soon, brother. Thank you so much.